Welcome everyone, this is Tactical Lich here, and today we have a Total Warhammer 2 multiplayer land battle between the Vampire Coast led by Mr. Tufel, who sent in this replay, and the Warriors of Chaos employing an interesting strategy. So for the army builds for the Vampire Coast, we have the classic artillery box with a mix of deckhand mobs and polearm variant, protecting the artillery and gunline core with a whole bunch of handgun gunnery mobs, and also a couple artillery in terms of mortars and carronade. In the center, we have a little bit of a backbone of the Lamprey's Revenge, very tough, self-regenerating rotting Prometheans, and on mobility side, we have a couple scurvy dogs on the flanks. Now, for the leadership, we have Noctilus on his pirate ship mecha. His toolkit includes Pit of Shades, Invocation of Hack, his bombardment ability, and also a bunch of zombie pirate summons in the form of spells, and his unique item, ready to drown the chaos in a sea of dead bodies. And then for the chaos side, we have a super duper wide front line mixed in with Chaos Marauders, Chaos Warriors with great weapons, and a couple aspiring champions. Now, these are pretty, well, niche picks in most matchups because they're not exactly great in dealing with killing off infantry, but they are absolutely tanks with 120 armor and extremely high melee defense, especially after all those gold chevrons. They will hold in melee combat, especially against those puny pirate deckhand mobs. Now for mobility, as usual, we have a whole bunch of Marauder horses, throwing axes, and horsemen regular. The AP damage on the throwing axes will be great against the pirate ship mechas and the Lamprey's Revenge, as long as they're not killed by the artillery. We have the same combo of horses on the other side. And for the single entities, we have Sigvald the Magnificent leading the army, absolutely tough to kill with all his defense buffs and his regenerating. The Vampire Coast would need a lot of firepower to bring down the prince. In the skies, we have an Exalted Hero coming in with the Mark of Corn, I think, and then the Fire Sword, Hellfire Sword, just to buff up his melee attack prowess, and Sorcerer of Fire with a bunch of Fireball and Burning Head, also with Kindle Flame to synergize with the flaming attacks granted by the Hellfire Sword. And that's basically it for the army builds. Now let's get the battle started. The game opens up with Noctilus and his Necrofax Colossus firing into some of these Marauder horses. Every volley is taking away quite a few models when they land, and forcing the Marauder horses to pull away from the artillery range while the infantry marches on under the bombardment of all these mortars. But a nice dodge right there, missing all these shots from the mortar, while on the left flank we have the mobility pushing forward, supported by the Exalted Hero. Now, the Chaos Warriors have done a quite interesting deployment here, concentrating all their forces onto one side of the battlefield, which is a great idea, a flank overload tactic, concentrating all your forces, hitting one side of the enemy formations, punching straight through with your entire army while your opponent can only respond with some of their units. This is a fairly common approach in rushing boxes, essentially going all in on one side of the vampire box and leaving the other side completely alone. Some of these sluggish units, like the deckhand mobs with polearms, would not be able to respond to all the chaos rush fast enough. As all the units engage onto one side, they will be left idle sitting away from the engagement, and all these Marauder mobility and the infantry will be forcing their way into the backline of the Vampire Coast. And while deckhand mobs don't rout, they're not exactly sturdy enough to hold back that many Chaos Infantry either. The Vampire Coast needs to shift over some of these deckhands with polearms over for some additional bodies to counteract that Chaos Infantry rush. As the Chaos Infantry, the Marauders are already sneaking through the gaps of the fairly spaced out Vampire Infantry front line and getting their hands onto some of these handgun backline. Now, the Marauder horses, hoping to harass the scurvy dogs and whatnot, being shot away by a combination of Count Noctilus and the handgun fire, they'll soon to move in again, as the opening in the backline is rather huge right now without enough infantry to screen off enemy mobility. while all the Chaos Warriors and aspiring champions and whatnot are just forcing themselves onto the right flank of the Vampire Coast. Even these Chaos Marauders who are heading for the Vampire Coast left flank decided to make a sudden U-turn and go for the right flank instead, putting even more pressure on the right side of the Vampire box as a Burning Head is roasting a bunch of handguns. Though thanks to that, these handguns on the left were able to turn around and safely fire from the distance. And Sigvald getting his hands dirty, dueling this poor Gunnery White. He does not want to be in this fight right now, as Sigvald, the magnificent duelist, will be eating him alive for breakfast. At the back, we have a whole bunch of Marauder horses. Seeing the gaps in the backline, will be flooding all these artillery models. The Exalted Hero took some damage from the handguns, but it might be worth it because he basically eliminated the mortar single-handedly. But a beautiful catch from the Pit of Shades here, trapping in multiple units of all these Marauder horses, and a bunch of firepower from Count Noctilus, routing all 5 units of all these Marauder horses here. If the Scurvy Dogs give chase, it will surely eliminate maybe a couple of these Marauder horses off the white line, which is right next to the artillery box of the Vampire Coast. And at the back we have the crossfire from all these zombie handguns, doing massive damage to the Exalted Hero. However, the Chaos Infantry push is just not containable at this point. Chaos Warriors pushing in completely fresh as the Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs on the right are all eliminated by the Chaos Infantry push, and now going after all these Zombie Pirate Gunnery mob. Even more bad news for the Vampirates, the 3 Marauder horses actually came back from routing. With the zombie gun line now lacking protection, the Marauder horses are free to roam around the backline and silence them. One thing worth noting that there is a Chaos Warhound with poison sitting at the back in reserve. This kind of cheap mobility can be very valuable in the late game, and it will prove its worth soon. Now back to the melee grind, the fabulous Prince Siggy is still thriving in it, while Count Noctilus, staying out of the fight, tries to gun down the Marauder horses. In the front line, the Chaos Warriors are pushing, but finally the reserve Pirate Deckhand mobs with polearms are activated, using their little armor-piercing polearms to probably fend off and do some damage to all these Chaos Warriors. Fireballs coming in from the Chaos Sorcerer of Fire, hoping to chip away the health of the Gunnery White, and is doing quite successfully. While the frontline, Zombie Summons and the Lamprey's Revenge are desperately holding off this tide of aspiring champions and Chaos Marauders, but unfortunately Sigvald is here, and he's slicing and dicing away through all these drowned corpses, able to do quite a bit of damage against the Lamprey's Revenge. Another nice Pit of Shades here, catching all these Chaos Warriors who are pinned in by the Pirate Deckhand mobs and actually routing them with one single cast. Mr. Tufel here really did a great job with the Noctilus Colossus. On top of those beautiful Pit of Shades, the artillery shots from the Necrophax, with dropping all these Marauder horses left, right and center, doing massive damage to the Chaos Army. The problem is these aspiring champions still fighting with their 73 melee defense. The Lamprey's Revenge actually having a rather hard time taking down all these aspiring champions as their attacks are not going through. They might have armor-piercing shotguns, but the champion silver shields are blocking their shots. The shots from Count Noctilus might be quite useful right here, but he is actually aiming at the Marauder horses once again because, as I said before, late game cheap mobility can be a great concern, able to shut down a lot of unprotected missile units. Just like here, the Chaos Warhounds with poison, finally activated from reserve, actually munched through one of the gunnery mobs and now going for a second one, getting quite some value, 2 chevrons up and 500 value already with minimal losses. And now they're already going for the second unit again. Noctilus trying to fight them off with a bunch of artillery, but I feel like it would have been better for him to just go in there, getting his hands dirty with the terror. The Chaos Warhounds with their low leadership will quickly be terror routed, but alas, it seems that Noctilus is really set in the artillery mindset right here. At the back, some of these gunnery mobs actually recovered from the push of all these mobility, but some Chaos Marauders managed to get into the unit and now silence them once again. Over here, Noctilus still haven't engaged in melee, trying to expand his ammo before doing so. The Lamprey's Revenge are still holding as expected with their really tough Regiment of Renown status, and the aspiring champions taking some damage as well, but they are still fighting against overwhelming odds. With only 3 models left and less than 600 HP there on their last leg, while Siggy is still completely healthy. The only hope to bring him down really is these gunnery mobs, but unfortunately for the vampires, the dogs are on a total rampage, getting over 130 kills, silencing all 3 handguns. Another volley of artillery going into their side, putting their leadership down to wavering territory, but they're still holding on, albeit barely. Now Sigvald is going for the big boss, challenging Noctilus pirate ship mecha to a duel. A bunch of zombie pirate deckhand mobs surrounds him, allowing Noctilus to extract himself, dropping in bombardment, hoping to chip away the health of Prince Sigvald, but I feel like that did more friendly fire to the zombie chav, but alas, damage is damage, and every bit of damage pushes Sigvald closer to his healing cap. Now, over here at this eternal melee grind between the superior melee defense and the regenerating Lamprey's Revenge, it is the aspiring champions emerging victorious, leaving only the deckhand mobs to some superior opponent here. Yeah, they have no chance standing against all these elite warriors of the chaos. While Noctilus being hounded by Prince Sigvald, he has taken some noticeable damage from the prince himself. Commanding his minions to tie down the prince, Noctilus is pulling away from combat, trying to expand his ammo. 3 massive cannonballs straight into the warriors. Even some of the pirate deckhand mobs doing so as well, shattering them with the volley of bullets, but then the aspiring champions are coming in with their silver shields, completely unfazed by small arms fire, but a side shot from Count Noctilus taking the model down with every shot. And, well, Prince Sigvald is still going after the poor Count Noctilus right now, constantly stabbing him in the back as Noctilus finishes off the remaining aspiring champions. There are still some deckhand mobs on the field, giving the Vampire Coast a fighting chance. But Prince Sigvald being so healthy is a massive problem here. An emergency invocation is dropped onto the gunnery mob here, hoping to sustain their HP and use up the remaining of their ammo to gun down Prince Sigvald, while Noctilus and the remaining infantry keeps him busy. We will soon know whether this is enough to turn the tables. A surround from the pirate deckhand mob supporting Count Noctilus would probably be a chance for Noctilus to bring back this fight, but unfortunately Necrofax Colossus have the jankiest animation, never really able to hit all these single entities. You can see that Noctilus, despite performing the attacking animations, he is not actually doing that much damage to Prince Sigvald. And Sigvald pushing through all these thinned out deckhand mobs, getting onto Count Noctilus once again. All the remaining infantry, including the earlier gunnery mob, crumbles to dust. A deckhand mob summon is dropped one last time, but alas, it is a little too late. With that, army losses is hit. Count Noctilus fires one last divine shot before getting finished off by Prince Sigvald the Magnificent, and chaos shall reign supreme today. GG to both players, and big thanks to Mr. Tufel for sending in this replay. Now for the battle performances, the Vampire Coast are essentially carried by Count Noctilus here, getting almost 3k worth of gold value, and the rest of the army, the zombie frontline and backline, weren't able to do too much damage here due to the pressure from all the Chaos Infantry. The Scurvy Dogs were a bit mismicroed here, not getting too much value. They could have chased down a lot of these Marauder horses, but unfortunately, it seems they were stuck in melee combat against some of the Marauders sometimes. The artillery got shut down by a combination of mobility, the horses, and the Exalted Hero, so in the end they weren't able to get back their worth as well. However, Lamprey's Revenge, as usual, a really solid unit, getting over 1,600 gold worth of value. They were able to hold the line for quite a long while against all these Chaos Infantry. Still, they were not able to punch through all these aspiring champions' defenses, and their damage potential was a bit wasted, while they themselves got dragged down by a combination of axes and also Prince Sigvald. Now for Count Noctilus himself, between the triple shot cannons, the Pit of Shades, the bombardment spells, and of course the zombie summons, he has been doing a lot of heavy lifting, getting over 200 kills, obliterating one of the Chaos Warrior unit, shot up a whole bunch of Marauder horses with the cannons and also the Pit of Shades. The only problem is that Necrofax Colossus is terrible at dueling characters, single entity, foot size, or even sized characters. So he was not able to obliterate the Prince Sigvald OP Magnificent. As you can see here, Prince Sigvald, the magnificently OP, has over 3k worth of damage value despite himself costing less than 2k value. The combination of the tankiness from his regeneration, high melee defense, and also his damage output from the heroic killing blow really turns him into a formidable combatant over a prolonged melee grind. And despite the Chaos Infantry not doing a lot of damage, you can see here the damage value isn't the greatest, only really the aspiring champions recovering their worth of value, but only barely due to themselves costing a lot with the double gold chevron upgrades. And then the horses, they didn't get a lot of value either, mostly disrupting all the handgun gunnery mobs from firing, using their mobility charges to their advantage. Although the Chaos Warhounds with Poison did a great job coming out from the left field in the late game, this kind of cheap mobility reserve really shines in hunting down enemy missile troops in the late game scenario. And with the zombie gun line going down to Chaos Warhounds, Marauder horses, and of course, sometimes fiery burning heads from the Chaos Sorcerer of Fire, who also got a bunch of value from sniping out the gunnery white with fireballs, the Vampire Coast unfortunately didn't really have that many tools left to deal with Prince Sigvald the Magnificent. And in the end, the healthy HP bar on the Chaos characters were able to suppress the Vampire Coast balance of power and earn their victory via army losses. Overall, a really fun game to watch and also a nice example of the flank overloading tactic, concentrating your forces onto one side of your opponent's formation, bricking their partial army, and then getting into their softer, squishier missile backline once you trample part of your opponent's front line. And yeah, that's basically it for today's video. Viewers, I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, remember to hit the like and subscribe to keep an eye out on new video uploads. They'll be including battle replays like this one, wild army builds, and also tips and strategies for Total Warhammer multiplayer. And if you want to share any replays, feel free to drop by my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. I'll be sure to check them out. That's gonna be all for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.